countries even existed. None of them successfully carried out their attacks, and none legally crossed via the Mexican border. So the border military complex, this is where everyone is making their money. As the U.S. declines economically, the border walls get higher and drone tech gets more sophisticated, and the National Guard and military is deployed to the border more routinely. It has little to nothing to do with migrants and everything to do with protecting the security of elite interests that are losing control of the economic and political system that sustain them. And global rivals continue to prosper. Companies that have profited from the U.S.-led invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq are now profiting off of the border security militarization, legitimized to the masses via shifts in immigration technology. So some of these guys you might recognize, Khaki. I don't know if you recognize this name. Khaki was the company also found to be responsible for the torture during the Abu Ghraib scandal. Elbit Systems is right there next to it. These are integrated fixed security tower constructors. Unisys is a very, very big computing company. Lots of people making a lot of money. So there's the Secure Border Initiative, which is bringing the battlefield to the border. In 2005, with the post 9/11 national security logic, the border's militarization policies and practices exploded. The SBI tremendously expanded technological and infrastructure capabilities for border agencies. Contracts were now being pursued in the open marketplace for fortification, surveillance systems, electronic surveillance, fences, stadium lighting, sensors and radars, and drones. The Secure Fence Act of 2006 then saw the congressional approval, a multi-billion-dollar bill that called for the construction of the border fence. This move has split binational communities, interrupted historical seasonal migration, and transformed the U.S. border into a physical war zone. This year also saw the end of catch and release, now detaining all non-Mexican immigrants until hearings take place. Estimated cost of $2 to $3 million per mile of fencing. A Halliburton subsidy received a contract of $30 million to maintain the border fence. Every year in Phoenix, there's a big border security expo. We've gone to this and protested it along with our immigrant allies and not had a great reception, but we've done it anyway. So the market is estimated to be at $20 billion. In 2018, it has reached $40 billion. By far the largest border security technology is the U.S. government, the largest market, excuse me. So the Integrated Fixed Tower Program, or the IFT system, this includes radar and day and night cameras mounted to a series of towers transmitting data over microwaves to the CBP station. Which agents then try to figure out how to act. The IFT is only the latest in the government attempts to cover the southwestern border. The first phase of this happening now is still sorry, I need to get some water. 300 to 400 million deployment. Tucson University of Arizona, where I'm sitting right next to, is actively campaigning to be the home of the base for whatever border technology company is awarded here. That is another potential campaign that is interesting to talk about. But in terms of their work with different universities, it's interesting to explore. So the influence of border tech money on policy. When the country is discussing immigration reform, we've got to be vigilant against profit motive and profit-making actors who exert significant influence on our policymakers. The argument that a militarized border protects our way of life and freedom is just as much a farce as George Bush telling the American people that Al-Qaeda attacked the U.S. because they hate our freedom. It's just not true that the border protects us. So this is some images from APSA. So this is a quote from some of the folks who have been found guilty, but initially or eventually this got overturned. This is No More Deaths, the Cabeza 10. We've been found guilty, but the real crime is the U.S. deliberate policy to use death as a deterrent at the U.S.-Mexican border. The criminalization of those acting in solidarity is a classic example of the ramping up of an authoritarian regime. The humanitarian work that has ultimately brought us here today will continue to address the border crisis until there are no more deaths. We refuse to stand by and watch silently as the United States becomes more and more deeply authoritarian. This is something that affects and should concern us all. That's final thoughts from some of the actors here in southern Arizona who have been detained and arrested for leaving water for migrants there. So, do you see how what I was saying before at the beginning of this presentation, being half Palestinian, Palestinian-American, makes one feel like a time traveler in this scenario? The militarization that we see on the U.S.-Mexican border is precisely what we've seen on the Israeli-Palestinian border. I worry about my friends in the Tohono O'odham Nation the way I worry about people in Gaza. I think that's a far way away and very different scenario, but I see people's movement limited more and more. And death as a deterrent is something that we're starting to see not just on the U.S.-Mexican border, but in our streets in American cities, I think, too, where